Hey guys, I know it's been a while since we've checked in with you. We are getting ready for Thanksgiving and we decided to get a tree. So things have changed since we saw you last. Not a ton of stuff, but I have hair now. Notice? You notice? It's true, right? I guess there's a lot of updating for you guys, but I don't think I can do it quite yet because we've had a rough summer. So what we're gonna do is decorate our Christmas tree.
Walk.
I cannot believe how big this tree is, you guys. Is it cool?
Yeah.
Super fast, you love it?
Yeah. Oh, I have a good idea. How about just let me go carve it out Dupelos?
That's a wonderful idea. Let's hit it. There we go.
Wow, look at that.
Oh.
We might need to move them up a little. Put some ornaments on?
No.
We didn't buy the hooks, so I forgot.
I thought they would have come with them. We don't have hooks for our bulbs, so some of them do. But I'm gonna make some out of paper clips, and I have red paper clips. So is that gonna work? Let's see. One bulb down, 100 more to go. So those of you guys who are sort of following our story before with my brother, he is still in jail. Has not even. Yeah, we know why. But he hasn't had a trial yet. So anyways, I have a house out in Oregon, but we're gonna sell it. And then we're gonna go on vacation. So our house in Oregon is the one that we have shot footage of us in when we're out there in the summers. And it's in my hometown. My family's been out there for 4 generations. That was my grandparents' house, so it's a little over 100 years old. And let's just say I had to evict some squatters out of there. They weren't supposed to be there. They felt like they were invited, but I felt like they were not. So my house was pretty much destroyed and it had a lot of work that had to be done to it. Anyways, I'm done. And I probably will never step foot into that town again because I'm just frustrated. So anyways, that's that. I don't feel bad about it. I feel like it's gonna be a good thing for our family. We can go on to do different and better things. My husband's madly in love with me.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's
I'm
amazing.
working my communication. I'm a little sick right now.
You can barely speak.
Yeah, I can really speak. And it's my feelings and vulnerabilities and
You don't need to tell him all that stuff, do you? Oh, do you want to? I'm sorry.
I don't care.
You're so hot. Awesome.
We got our tree. That's the important part.
Here we go.
Now we're
It's almost Christmas.
yeah.
It's almost Christmas, kids. Don't forget.
Watching how excited he is just amazing. I remember putting up my first tree. This is actually our first tree they can remember. And staying up late with my sister and my parents putting up our tree and our ornaments.
I remember going to buy a tree one time with my parents because this was in Oregon and they were like, $15? Why is it that expensive? You know, here in Texas, the trees are so expensive. The one we got this year it's a large tree. It would have not been cheap even in Oregon, but yeah. Do you want to say hi to everybody? Say hi. They haven't seen you in a little while. So we had a rough summer.
That's almost done.
Yeah, that happened.
It's pretty sad.
It is pretty sad. There was a pool accident that happened in front of us, and Smash had to be resuscitated. The beast saved his life. It was like that. It was extremely heavy. We're probably gonna do a whole video on that one just because we learned a lot from that experience. We basically were getting ready to leave and we took his life vest off, and within seconds, he, yeah. Well, I mean, it was a life-changing experience, I think, for all of us, and we loved our little biscuit so much, so it was, I don't know, even now it's hard to talk about. I kind of wrote something up on it to warn other families, and we came up with some hard and fast rules, so I'm going to share those with you in a different video. Oh, super fast start kindergarten. and we took him out because his school is completely overcrowded and his teacher,
It's too mean.
out of the mouth of babes,
Hush!
she was, we don't speak to children like that, so
It wasn't for us.
she wasn't for us. And it was a long struggle. It was kind of unreal, the kind of stuff that we experienced, and we were not prepared for experiencing anything like what we went through.
Witnessing it was really, really terrible.
At first, we didn't understand why Superfast was so anxious. You know, he can be a little bit nervous sometimes in new situations, but we're talking months into school. And we ended up finding out at the 2-month parent-teacher conference that he hadn't spoken to his teacher in 2 months, and she waited that long to tell us, which is crazy. But
Can you believe that?
yeah, they were just small red flags of a much larger underlying systemic issue, is what we came to the conclusion of. And so we're going to be pursuing different educational options for him because we actually need him to have an education. We're 4 months into school right now, and we have talked to every person in that school, and in this time they have not mitigated the problem, and they seem to think it's fine to just move on. Meanwhile, the teacher was telling us that my son is behind or whatever, which he's not. If she were at all kind to him, she would have spoken to her. So the whole thing was extremely frustrating. I mean, she basically told us after 2 months that he was in the 30th percentile for reading and that he hadn't spoken to her.
And he's actually done better after he left.
He did. So he's been out of school for a week, and just in that time, he's doing much better. His confidence is raising again, but we didn't really figure it out until I got to go and witness the classroom and see how the kids and the teacher were interacting. And I'm very sensitive to any kinds of emotional or verbal abuse, anything that's like demeaning or putting kids down or something like that. So when I noticed that that's what was happening, I was editing this video and I decided that I had to change some of the language because it wasn't as exact as I wanted it to be. So what I wanted to say is that I saw a lot of intimidation happening in the classroom. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't do anything right away because I didn't want to be hasty. So we ended up waiting until it got extremely dire, I would say.
Well, yep.
I'm leaving out a lot of really horrible things, basically, but it was bad situations. It's kind of funny. I have to tell you guys, this is like a moment. When we bought in this neighborhood, we bought here because the schools are supposed to be so good. And while we were driving down our main street, I remember the street that we live on, I remembered saying at one point, wow, there are a lot of private school plaques in the front yards. I wonder what that means.
Now we know.
Yeah, I mean, that means that people are sending their kids to private school because they figured something out. So it took us a little while. We figured it out, and basically it ain't happening. I always wanted to give my kids a better education than what I had. I grew up in a very small town that's not very affluent. I mean, you guys have kind of seen some clips of it. And, I had a teacher that I would say had, at least in my kindergarten, had an extremely high emotional intelligence. I like the crunching. I had a terrific kindergarten experience, and I think that those experiences are so important, and they set the tone for the future. So yeah, I was lucky. I had a wonderful education. I remember the day that I realized I could read in kindergarten, and I wasn't being forced, I wasn't being talked down to, I wasn't being told that if I didn't get it, that I wasn't going to make it the next year or anything like that. And so it's an eye-opener. What I noticed is that they're just pushing a ton of curriculum on these children. So that's one thing. Also, the schools are overcrowded, and the teachers are overwhelmed, so it's impossible for them to perform well. And on top of that, I've seen some personality traits that I don't think are conducive to any child learning, let alone my own. So, they're definitely not pushing emotional intelligence there. Our first inclination when we were talking about choosing schools is that we wanted our kids to go to public school because we thought it would be a good way for them to get used to the fact that life sucks. Not really. We thought it'd be a good way for them to get used to some struggle, I guess, because I believe in that. So you guys have watched my videos and you know a lot about how I feel about resilience, and you know, I'm a big Ralph Waldo Emerson fan, and he's somebody whose work I started reading when I was very young, a little bit older than Superfast. So I figured that public school would be a good way to get like a well-rounded social education as well as a regular education. What I haven't banked on is that they care a lot about scores, right? So they start prepping these kids for these tests that they're not going to start taking until the 3rd grade, but they start prepping them for it now, and it kind of it's too bad because they don't recognize the fact that early childhood development is not linear. I mean, kids are learning at different paces and their brains are developing in different ways, and that's normal. So they don't honor the very concept of child development at school. So Superfast was having a hard time because they want them to write books, okay? So they're 6-page books with simple sight words, and that's an expectation. And he'd have a really hard time getting started, and I guess he needed a little more one-on-one time or some prompting, and he wasn't getting that. So was having a hard time doing those sight books, and his teacher was keeping him in from recess because he wasn't writing. So, you know, there was a lot of negative kind of reinforcement, but very little positive reinforcement. If you're one of the students who's already performing at the preferred level, then you're going to be getting praised. And if you're a student who's not performing at that level yet, or maybe your brain sequencing is developing in a different way, then your experience is going to be negative all of the time. And so that's what I realized was happening with Superfast. So, I mean, he was being held in from recess, and we weren't even being notified of it. And the final straw basically was that I met with this teacher. They were talking about moving Superfast to a different classroom. I met with this teacher, and she started telling me in detail about how he'd helped him write this book. His folder was filled with empty books, and so she was telling me in detail, you know, I helped prompt him and so on. Holding in her hands was the book that I helped him get started when I was working there doing a writing lab. So I'm sitting there listening to this fictitious story about how she had prompted him and all the progress that she thought she was making with him. And I was horrified, honestly. Like, you know, she obviously didn't know who my son was at all or what he's capable of. And I feel like if that kind of stuff gets by in a school, it probably isn't just with one teacher. So I think that there was a systemic issue there, and some of it's overcrowding and some of it's underqualification, in my opinion. Not right for us. That's how I summarize it kindly. It's not right for us. We're definitely going to be finding a place that honors my son's developmental process and his intelligence, and a place where they will be able to recognize that he actually is developing and learning. At the 2-month conference, she had told us that Superfast recoiled in response to her talking to him. Candy cane! You want to come show him? And that's not normal. That's not normal. I know that's not normal, even for my child. Even for my... That's a wrap, kids! Even for my shy, obedient, people-pleasing, candy cane holding boy, it's not normal for him to recoil, certainly not 2 months into school. So that should have been an indication for me that he was not in a good place, that he was not in a good situation. And I had a lot of red flags that were pretty major, like health violation red flags, but I didn't act on them, and because I didn't understand what was happening. I mean, he went through a very rigorous pre-K program without these kinds of issues last year. His class was huge. And there were a lot of challenges, and he made it through, and he was one of the students, and not all of them were, but he was one of the students that did meet all of the check marks by the end of the year. So I should have recognized when I saw the signs, and with the teachers telling me that my son's recoiling in response to her, that something was wrong. And you know, I got to step into the school and witness it myself. When a parent witnesses behavior that is kind of like icky, and that's what is considered the norm behavior that you can act like in front of the parent, then you know that's the major red flag. And I still didn't act at that point because I am a mama bear, so I was trying to make sure I wasn't being hasty again. So anyways, I waited way too long to get my son out of that situation, and without the help of the school. So, I mean, they literally thought that it was fine for him to be terrified for 4 entire months. So I started contacting his school counselor at 1 month in to figure out what was going on. And, you know, she didn't call me back, and then, you know, vice principal and principal. And I would talk to him, and they would be all on board. Yeah, they want to help us and stuff. When they stopped pushing it back onto me, like making it seem like it was something that was going on here, I have entered the world of government bureaucracy once again, except for this time not with the Army. This time it's with the stressed out and underpaid teachers, which they deserve. They deserve a break. They do. If you're demeaning children, in particular if you're demeaning my child, like, somebody had to have heard that. Somebody should have known that and should have told me to get my child out of that situation. So I feel like the school failed me. I feel like the administration failed our family, and I'm not okay with it. And on top of that, I pay about 75% more than the other taxpayers in Texas because of where we live. So I'd really like for that school to be better for the other students, you know, rather than underfunded and overcrowded. And so that's something that I would like to see happen in the future. Right now, I think that a lot of parents don't actually understand the environment that their children are in. And, you know, that's okay for their families, not okay for mine. My son needs to have an education, and that needs to happen even if he's a quiet kid, and even if he's, you know, needs some time to warm up or whatever, he still needs to have an education. So as a parent, I need to give that to him, and obviously this particular public school situation was not going to be doing that. So big changes, and we're all disappointed, but my son is resilient, and so he's going to keep on trucking. Isn't that right? Super fast. I think he said eek. That really wasn't what I was going for. But he's a strong kid, and he always has been. He's always been an extremely capable little boy and very smart. So I'm not worried that we can find a good situation for him. You know, because like I said, I believe in grit, but what I don't believe in is abuse. I do know that early childhood trauma wires people's brains, and I know that my son doesn't need to be treated that way. There you go. That's that. What I've learned from the experience is that I have a really hard time confronting aggressive women. I have a difficult time with aggressive women. I tend not to be very aggressive, and I have a hard time asserting myself and having boundaries sometimes. But I'm also tough. So it's kind of a strange mix. What I recognized going into this situation is that these people just thought that I was way softer than I am. And at one point, I actually said to them, you know, I'm an 8-year honorably discharged veteran of the United States Army. I'm able to recognize difficult situations and have some grit and some resilience to get through them. But I also know how you don't talk to a 5-year-old. You know, and if you can't tell that a child is recoiling in response to you, I actually saw my child wince. Okay, so if a child's responding to you like this, then he's scared of you, and it doesn't take very much emotional intelligence at all to recognize that and sort of change your approach. So I am not enthusiastic that happened. I'm especially upset that after I reached out to the school, that they didn't take measures to check it out and see what was going on. So anyways, that's that, and we're moving on from that situation. Probably we really don't need a lot more trauma in our family, but you know, we're gonna take it and handle it as usual. Life is tough, but we're gonna figure it out. Oh,
For bedtime.
oh, it's time for bedtime. It's so late. You guys did such a good job putting the tree up and decorating it.
No.
No, not right now. No haircuts. I definitely went off about that subject more than I want to, but so here's our Christmas tree. We are early Christmas treers. I'm feeling good about life in general. I'm healthy. I have hair. My family's healthy. My little boys are alive. Got my child out of a bad situation, and I feel good about that. And I feel good about the way he has been responding since he's been removed from that situation. So we're gonna figure it out. Thanks for sticking in there, those of you who decide to come back and kind of check us out again. And thank you for subscribing to my channel. And I hope you hit like and subscribe. As a side note, I did lock some videos. I realized as my numbers started approaching 11,000 subscribers that I need to be especially careful to protect my family. So that's why some of my crass or videos or whatever, or racy videos are not on there anymore. And that's hard for me. My sense of humor can kind of be racy, but you know, you guys are here to see me and my family interact, I assume. So we're gonna do that within the confines of it being, you know, I guess, safe territory for my family. Thanks for subscribing and thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.